Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Spooktober We Watch Shudder. I am one of your hosts. My name is JD. Who's on the other side?
It's Michelle.
It's Michelle, guys. Me and Michelle are here with you yet again, talking about spooky movies. Michelle, what movie are we talking about today?
Today we are watching or talking about a movie that was made during COVID, which at the time that you were listening to this is clearly not an issue at all anymore. Everybody is completely recovered. No bad
Are we
things.
So sure about that?
I'm hoping. It's
We're
6 months
hopeful.
from now, so let's
We're
hope.
hopeful.
So this movie was filmed and created and released during quarantine, and it is called Host.
Right. All right. So like we always do, I'm going to hit you here with the description of this movie straight from the Shudder website. Host, directed by Rob Savage. 6 friends get together during lockdown for their weekly Zoom call. It's Haley's turn to organize an activity, and instead of a quiz, she's arranged for a medium to conduct a seance. Bored and feeling mischievous, Gemma decides to have some fun and invents a story about a boy in her school who hanged himself. However, her prank gives license for a demonic presence to cross over, taking on the guise of the boy in Gemma's made-up story. The friends begin noticing strange occurrences in their homes as the evil presence begins to make itself known, and they soon realize that they might not survive the night. A Shudder original. Michelle, you know how we do this. Hit us with them spoiler-free thoughts to kick it off.
Can do. So there are a lot of movies at this point that use kind of the found footage sort of delivery method. And I would say that these movies that come from a webcam kind of fall in the same category as something that was filmed on camcorder or mobile phone. But they are a more niche type of movie, and there are not very many movies that do it well. Off the top of my head, I can name 3. 2 of them are Searching and Profile, which I highly recommend. Not horror movies, definitely thriller, great movies. The third one is Host. Host nails it. And part of it is that the first time I watched it was in the middle of quarantine. It was delivered at the perfect time. And then going back to rewatch it for today's episode, I watched it on my computer in my office instead of on a living room TV screen. And it was an entirely different experience watching it on my actual computer. If you have not seen this movie, watch it on your computer. Watch it by yourself on your computer. I cannot recommend that enough. It's never true that watching something on your computer is the best method. And in this case, absolutely was. Okay. I love this movie. It is almost perfect, except that it gets real stupid for 5 minutes. But despite that, I'm going to give it a 4.75 out of 5 skulls.
All right. And as we've discussed plenty of times before on All Screens Great and Small, that's my other podcast, guys. I'm sorry. This is We Watch Shudder. As we've talked about before, found footage is, first of all, I agree with you. This definitely belongs in that found footage sort of space overall, and it is typically not something that I really enjoy. There are a few specific occurrences that are exceptions to that rule, but the vast majority of them that I have found, I do not like. In this case, I absolutely agree with you. Host is one of them that I love. This movie is shockingly good. Like incredibly, again, specifically considering when it was made and then when it was released. It was produced during the real heavy early periods of COVID lockdown in 2020, released later that year while we were still in really significant COVID lockdown. I thought the way they used the current technology, the fact that the entire movie is just a video recording of a Zoom call, that's something we all know. Like, that was something we were all working with right then, even down to the simple fact that the movie itself is actually less than an hour long, because it's centered around that idea that we all know that unless you're paying for some upgraded Zoom membership, the free call is an hour long. And these are characters who obviously would be using that free call method. So the movie it gets right to business. I would love to have a conversation with somebody at some point about how they did some of the things they did in this movie, considering how they had to shoot it and when they were shooting it, because it's incredibly effective, really well done on a number of levels. I'm going 4.5 stars on this, 4.5 skulls on this one. But I'm right up there with you. This movie is a real good time. And I strongly recommend, as with some of our films, this is one that I really think if you think you have any interest in, you should definitely go see before we start to break it down here in just a moment.
100%. I cannot tell you enough. This movie, with both of our ratings, just became the highest rated movie between us on
as
this
of the time of recording,
podcast.
which
As
is
of the
in
time of
April.
recording.
We obligatory tell you in October that we recorded
course.
these 6 months ago, part of the episode.
I'm so glad you did. I was so worried we weren't going to mention it. We got it every time. But this got a 4.625 out of 5. Highest by far. You and I have very differing tastes. Everybody I talked to,
well, and at this point, to be totally honest,
loves it.
Thinking specifically about the movies that we've talked about so far, I think that makes perfect sense. I do think overall we've done about 12 episodes at this point in the can. This one is one that I definitely think is probably the best overall film that we've talked about so far. It's fantastic. All right, guys. Pause it right now, and go watch it, and then come back. It's 56 minutes long. It's an hour. You got plenty of time. Go check it out. Hit that pause. All right, Michelle, I'm going to let you take off on this one. Tell us everything you loved about Host.
Okay. So one of the things is I love found footage to begin with, and I make a point of watching all found footage, and I will also acknowledge that there is a lot of bad found footage. And the first time I watched this, I was legitimately very scared, and I loved that.
It tripped me out, for sure.
It takes a lot to scare me, and this movie, I was like, oh my God, what was that? What was that? What was that thing? And back when I was in high school, I was a little weird witchy teen, and I did a lot of seances. Just me and my friends hanging out. This felt like I was there for the seance, especially watching it on my computer. I was so brought into it.
That's genius, by the way. I haven't watched it that way. I've seen it twice, and I watched it cast to my TV both times. And I think I'm going to have to watch it again at some point that way, because visually the entire movie is the Zoom call. Like, they keep the controls down at the bottom of the screen the entire time.
It felt like I was watching it on Zoom, and I was just another person on this Zoom call. It was a very different experience, and I was delighted to figure that out, because I just happened to watch on my computer because I was doing other things, and then realized, like, oh my God, what is going on? This is so much better. But I love found footage, and the way that they do this, and the way that they bring you in and they make you feel like you are actually in there observing this, is that they first off, they do one thing that I like, that I have to cover just very quickly, is that they do both gallery view, and then they do the highlight of the speaker on occasion, and they switch between those, which isn't really something that Zoom does on its own, but nobody watching this film cares. Nobody thinks about it like, you know, that's the only thing that I think like isn't authentic to Zoom, is that it's changing on its own. But because of that, they gave you this view with 5, sometimes 6 screens. I think there might have been 7 when Teddy was there, as well as so like 7 screens, and you are just watching this. There is no music. You are just waiting for something to happen. And you are trying to watch all of the screens very quickly to spot something, and then you'll hear somebody react, and you didn't see it, and it feels like I am there watching it. And at one point, they do something so brilliant, because one of the biggest things that happens in the beginning is that the girl who put this together, whose name Haley gets drugged backwards on a chair. But while that is happening in her screen, Emma is sitting back against the wall, and she starts crawling towards the camera. So you were pretty much guaranteed to be watching her, because that's what happened. Like, that's stuff that's going on, and see out of the corner of your eye something big, or like the lights go on or something else happens in a different person's screen, and you miss it. And it's like, it feels like you're constantly going to miss something. So you just want to stay plugged in, and it builds suspense so well. And I love this film. It is genius.
Just starting there before we get into maybe some more specific elements, I agree with you 100%. The fellow who directed this movie, Rob Savage is his name. Him and the creative team that put this together I am insanely impressed by how well they took advantage of that Zoom format. They did. What I also love about it is they did basically everything, right? I can't think of a single thing now that any other movie can come in and do that isn't just going to be a reference to this. They looked at what they had available to them to be able to make a movie in that environment and looked at the tools they had and said, okay, what can we do with this to be especially creepy and effective? It has a very Paranormal Activity vibe, which is, as I've mentioned before, the first 3 Paranormal Activity films are also some of the only found footage movies that I really enjoy. This really reminded me of that in the sense that it took advantage of a technology available to it and used it to incredible effect. One of my favorite things that they did with it is just the simple thing with the filters. And then there's that scene where the lady comes into that room and that filter is just floating in the middle of the air for no reason at all. And then it's just gone. That was so well done. Even the element where when there's the knock in, I believe, Emma's house, and she gets onto her, she's clearly in the meeting on her phone. And so when she goes to investigate, she's like, no, fuck this. And she goes and she finds a selfie stick and they use that. That was genius. They did
the virtual background, obviously.
Yes.
We had just learned about also, that when, like a week before I saw this. That was starting to become a thing.
When God. She has that that recorded background of her walking through. The way they use that, I just also brilliant, just pure Alfred Hitchcock thriller, creepy cinema. Those first 5 to 10 minutes or so when everybody's getting logged in, they set up everything. They set up the filter gag. They set up the video background gag. They set up the Polaroid camera. They set up the music box. They set up everything, and every bit of it pays off, and it's fantastic. Okay, go ahead. More points. So we're talking about just the production of it. Yeah. So, like, they used that Zoom, even right down to the way they do the credits at the end. I love the credits. Are just a list of participants in the meeting. And the whole, oh, God, it's incredible. It's so well done.
The director, Rob Savage, has a movie coming out on June 3rd that I am very excited for. It is called Dashcam. And it is dash cam footage. Okay. And
I'm going to have to see this for sure.
I was going to say, it sounds like before Host, I would have been like, well, that's stupid. That sounds awful. I'm going to watch it, but it's going to be so dumb. Knowing he did that and knowing he did Host, I am very, very excited for it.
For sure. Of course, so by the time you listen to this, we'll have already seen it and probably loved it if this movie is any indication.
I know. Maybe we'll do like a special episode after this one, like just covering that so that we can follow.
Right.
Unless it's never on Shudder.
Yeah, and like I said, like they do things here. There are a couple of extra horrific things. I mean, the first time that is it Christine who has the moving background, I believe. The first time that we're watching that moving background, and then her Caroline. I knew it was a C and ended with an E. Yeah. But when that very first time that her face smashes into the screen, holy shit! I jumped out of my seat both times. The first time I watched this film, the second time I watched it, I knew it was gonna happen, and it still got me. But probably one of my favorite things is towards the end, when Teddy gets knocked out and then he wakes up on fire and just starts screaming. Oh, that's terrifying. Can you imagine Michelle waking up on fire?
I do. I'm always so hot. I wake up on fire, blah, blah, every day.
God,
anyway,
here she goes.
The Teddy part, I know, I can't help it. The Teddy part is the part where I said it got stupid for 5 minutes.
I was about to ask you.
Here's the thing. The Teddy part, as an isolated thing, I think they basically went like, what's everything we can do in this movie? And they put all the reasonable stuff into the movie. And then they went, okay, well, we still have some ideas. So we need to throw a guy in that we can just torture for a while, because shit gets wildest for Teddy to like an absurd amount, and it's like they like raise his girlfriend 15 feet in the air and drop and break her neck, then drop her into a pool. And I think they just went, we have an idea and we're just going to make it happen all to this one guy.
What I liked about that, the reason, I guess here's why that worked for me, is like, imagine it from his perspective, right? Like, this is just a weekly game night that he's usually doing with his friends, and he disappears right at the beginning of the movie, right? So he's been gone the entire time all this other shit has been happening. And that idea that all it took was for him to come back onto the call, and now he's exposed to the demon as well, and now his whole shit is getting fucked up, and he doesn't even know, he hasn't seen any of this other stuff. Like, I don't know, I didn't have a problem with that. I want to know how they did that with the lady getting thrown up into the air, and then obviously it's a wire gag, right? I mean, clearly that, but they did even like that very last moment where the beer bottle just comes flying off the counter and smashes Gemma in the back of the head. That's the thing that they established early on. They established very clearly that Gemma and Haley live very near each other. Mm-hmm. So when she does eventually say fuck it and gets up and leaves her apartment to go see what's going on at Haley's place, that makes sense. It works in the movie. This is just such a perfectly planned and constructed and executed movie that used everything available to it to its advantage.
What I like is that at one point Emma is hiding under a blanket while all her friends are getting killed, and she's safe as long as she's under the blanket, and then she leaves the blanket and that's when she gets killed. Proving once again that if you're under the blanket they can't get you. That's just a rule with ghosts and demons.
Throws that blanket and it just hangs over an invisible person. How do they do that? I want to know how they do it because it's so fucking cool. Oh
my god.
They did the footsteps in the flower, a little homage to Paranormal Activity there, I think. So many cool things.
The very end of the movie where it tells them that they have a minute left until the meeting is done, and you are watching that every time the Polaroid happens. You're like, something's going to happen. And of course, the demon reveal at that very last second is stupid. I hate CGI, stupid demon stuff. They could have done something like something else. That's just a pet peeve I have. But the fact that we were building up, I don't care.
I liked it. It didn't bother me at all. I think the reason it didn't bother me is how quick it was. I do appreciate that it was a quick flash. One thing that if I have any, I gotta really dig deep for nitpicks about this movie. First of all, something I absolutely love about it, again, is it's only 56 minutes long. You can watch this movie anytime. It's so quick, and they do not. There is that scene where she's got the phone on the selfie stick, and she's turning it around in the attic, and those feet are dangling. Those dangling feet are on the screen in her window for a long time, and the camera passes right by them, and nobody notices them until the camera is almost all the way gone. I noticed them the instant they appeared on screen, because I understand
I did not.
Are you serious?
I did not.
I noticed them immediately. To the extent that I was surprised by how long it took them to mention it as the characters. And now, I definitely think you can play that off as what you were talking about, how this, because it happens in one of those scenes where there are like 6 panels on the screen, right? It's gallery view. But my argument against that is that doesn't really work, because that's the camera that's in the attic. That's where they should all be focused right now, is watching that panel, because that's the whole reason that it's happening. And that's what I was doing, and I saw those dangling legs immediately.
I can tell you, what my brain did is, as she was panning, that is a very long pan.
It is.
And I thought it was a box at first, which is probably what they would have thought. I just thought it was like a, because it's kind of further back. It's parallel. I like at the very last second realized, oh my God, that was feet. But there's no like, I did not register it the first time I watched it. The second time, absolutely, but I knew something was coming. But that's what my brain did, so that's why I didn't mind that too much. This movie, like I said, it certainly didn't, and it clearly did nothing to ruin the movie for me. I'm just like, okay, well, I better find something that I can be nitpicky about. No, that's fair.
But no, I loved this film.
I like that they answer the question that a lot of found footage movies don't, which is why are they filming? And in this case, a lot of that can be that they are scared, they are home alone, and they are essentially on the phone with their friends.
Right.
So that's why the laptop is going everywhere, because
Right.
that's the same that you would do with a phone.
They're not still filming in the middle of crisis. They're staying on the phone, and the phone just happens to be recording everything.
Yes,
yeah, that's
and
very clever.
One of the things, like, I just like watching it the second time. I was like trying to like just very like analyze this. And another thing that I see a lot in found footage when they have a laptop is they turn the laptop around so that like your audience can see what you're seeing.
They do that almost never here.
I was going to say they do it very minimally. You're watching them and just occasionally seeing things behind them. And that's so realistic. It's like they really just like, they recorded this as though like I can't even put it into words. Like they could have just recorded this in an hour, right, and it just one nonstop
it's
thing.
Definitely it's definitely like not a movie that they did record all at once, considering all the special effects and everything involved. And another reason that I say I want to know how they did this is specifically because I want to know how they arranged and executed those effects while producing this movie during COVID lockdown. Mm-hmm. Like they had to have very minimal contact with the people participating. Like it was just incredibly well done in that aspect. But yes, it feels like a legitimate, unbroken, very realistic Zoom call that we just happened to get to watch the recording of.
Exactly.
The performances were all, I don't know who any of these actors are. I want to see every one of them in more things. Every one of them was fantastic and believable. It's so clever, so well thought out, so well planned and executed. I love everything about this movie.
It gave me a new phrase that I am going to start using too, which is when the girl is scared after she thinks that things have gotten better and she goes into the bathroom and they're like, "Are you in the bathroom?" And she says, "Yeah, I'm not going in here by myself." And they go, "Panic wee."
Yes.
And I have anxiety, and now every time I use the bathroom, I will be going to do a panic wee. And I love that so much.
Yeah.
Panic wee is my new favorite thing.
Yeah. Just a fantastic achievement, both a great story, good performances, great effects, just so clever on so many levels. I can't recommend this one enough.
Yeah, I love it. I do have to, I thought of one small criticism.
Okay, go ahead.
These girls have long hair beside candles a lot. I have lit my hair on fire twice in my life. Once when I was a very small child and my grandma had to pick me up and dunk me upside down into a bucket of water. And I'm just saying, like, that's a very scary thing. And if they put that in a horror movie, I would automatically be scared. And I kept waiting for them to catch on fire. And then fucking Teddy is the one who catches on fire. Misdirection. This movie is just full of
on fire. That music box. The minute that music box showed up, I was like, oh shit, this is not going to end well at all. Oh.
I like in concept. I just like, if they could have cut Teddy out and still had the same film and I would have been fine. Sure. It was like they went like, we have a bunch of big shit and it's going to take away from everybody else's story if we do it. And they went, let's just torture Teddy. And that's
I guess I can see your point of like, well, we needed some excuse to hang somebody in midair and then drop them into a swimming pool. So Teddy's girlfriend's rich parents' house seems like the right place to do it.
Exactly. But I don't even really fault them for it. No. It's just, that's why it doesn't get a 5 from me. Because for 5 minutes, both times I saw it, I was like, oh, but fucking
Michelle,
Teddy, I don't care.
Up on fire. How fucking scary is that?
I do that all the time. Every day. That's what my alarm clock does. It just lights me on fire. And then I'm awake and I'm ready for work.
Well, we got a big
man up.
We got a big winner on this one today, guys. Yeah. I also should point out that it was in the heart of major COVID quarantine in 2020 that I first became a Shudder subscriber. And to my knowledge, and memory, this is the first. It's not the first movie I watched on Shudder, but it's the first Shudder original / exclusive that I remember watching, and it's one of the reasons I was immediately like, oh, I got to keep an eye on this service for a while at least, and it hasn't let me down. I mean, some ups and downs along the way, but good stuff. So go watch
like
Host.
Night's
Yeah. Yeah. Go watch Host.
Y'all remember Night's End? I remember Night's End.
Night's End. What a movie it was. Yeah.
See, and if that had been done from a laptop perspective, like this movie, this is what I'm saying. Host set the bar too high, and they should have gone this route. Anyway, I'm still mad about Night's End. I will never forgive them.
We'll never forgive it.
Never.
All right. Speaking of the Night's End, say goodnight, Michelle.
Good night, Michelle.